Okay, we're going to prepare our watercolor paper. And so we're going to go ahead and make this paper smaller. And so go ahead and tear off one piece of your watercolor paper from your pad. And let's go ahead and divide it into 4 equal places. So it's 15 inches long. So use your ruler to mark 7.5. And then do it at the other end as well. And draw a line. And you want to make sure that you're always using really light pencil marks when you're drawing on watercolor paper so that it doesn't smudge and smear. So you can barely see it here. And then we're going to go ahead and do it this way as well. So it is 11. So it's going to be at 5.5. So make your 2 tick marks at 5.5 and then connect. I like to use H pencils or HB pencils when I'm drawing on watercolor paper, and I like to use it very light. I want to make sure I don't use or create any groups. So there are 2 ways that you can go about cutting your paper at home. One way you could do it is obviously you could grab out a pair of scissors. You are going to need scissors for today anyway, so you might want to do that. Another thing you can do is if you have a ruler that is long enough, you can tear watercolor paper. Now, this is something that probably scares many of you, so I would just use your scissors, but I'm pretty confident, and I've got a long ruler. So I would hold it in place, and then I would tear the paper towards the ruler, and I get kind of like this deco edge here, and that's pretty common for watercolor paper when you buy it naturally. You'll actually notice that your big sheet that's in your set actually has a deco edge. It's where the paper is pressed and it kind of like oozes out the edge, and they keep it. So you can cut these, right, with your scissors, or you can tear them. So if you decide you're going to tear, if you do it the first time and you make a mistake, you know, we're not going to use this whole piece of board, so if it's a minor issue, you can probably go ahead and still use it, because our finished paintings are going to be about 4 by 5. We'll probably use a couple of these a little bit bigger. Okay. So we'll probably start with 2 of these, but we can always go ahead and soak them all. So what you're going to do after you have your paper is we're going to soak it in water. So you want to grab yourself a container that is clean. You want to make sure your hands are clean anytime you touch the watercolor paper. For bigger pieces of watercolor paper at home, I often use a large sink or a bathtub. Because these are small, I'm just using like a pan from my kitchen. And so what you want to do is take your paper and you want to submerge it under the water, right? 2 side up. So one side is smooth, the other side is rough. Put it up so that's rough, and then submerge both of them. You kind of want to soak them for a little bit. We want to have the water fibers break down. You probably noticed that when we were doing many of the exercises like the landscape or the glazing grid, that your paper was starting to warp. The whole reason for putting and pre-soaking the water, your paper in the water, is so that when it dries, it will dry flat. So we're going to adhere it to a piece of masonite. So in your set, you had this giant piece of masonite. Okay, we're going to use that to paint on top of. You want to think about this as going to be a workspace. It's kind of big. So where are you going to want to place your object, or excuse me, your paper when you're done? I'm probably going to put mine towards the top left corner so that if I work, I can probably put my palette and my water on the left because I'm a right-handed person. So if you're left-handed, you probably want to put it on the top right and put your palette on your left side, okay? I normally soak watercolor paper for probably about 10 minutes. I like to use warm, not hot water because I feel like it goes faster. So that's a little hint too. We're going to use this box tape, right? And you had a bunch of it rolled up. You're going to need some pieces that are, you're going to need basically 4 pieces for each sheet. So this is the dry one that is not soaking. And so you're going to need some pieces that are a little bit bigger than each. So if you want to go ahead and pre-cut that while you're working, you can cut it, you can tear it. Just pay close attention. You want to make it a little bit bigger than the actual side. However, you don't want to be wasteful because you run out of this, you run out of it. So you want to make sure that you have enough. I'm going to kind of go, and I could always, you know, this is the long one and I need 4 of them total. I can sort of do it this way, you know. I like to pre-do all this so that I'm not letting the paper dry when I am actually in the process of doing it, okay? So we're gonna pretend that I've soaked my paper for 10 minutes. So the video that I attached shows one method, and my high school art teacher showed me another method that I think works really, really, really well. So what you wanna do is you wanna pick up your watercolor paper with clean hands, right? It's really important to make sure it's not dirty. And you wanna pick it up, and then you want to tilt it. And by tilting it, you can sort of see on the video, there's a stream of water running down it. And that will make sure that no extra water collects here. And then put your paper in whatever orientation you want to paint. I'm gonna put it as a horizontal. And so what you wanna do is use some of that sponge to wipe off some of the extra water. So this is the clean one. And then you can also use a sponge, maybe your dirty one, to activate the tape. So I'm putting some water on it, right? And I'm gonna go ahead and tape it down. And I wanna make sure that it's only going over like a ½ an inch. I could have put pencil on this if I wanted to ensure that it's the right size, and I probably should have done that before I even soaked it. This is actually the very first time I've ever done this. I normally use staples and masking tape at school. Okay, so this looks a little crooked, so while it's still wet, I'm gonna go ahead and straighten it up. Yep, still crooked. There we go. Now, I accidentally went over the edge. You can't see this, but I'm just gonna do it like that. Just fold it over. That was easy. I talked too soon. I probably made a mistake here, but that's okay. So this sticky gum stuff, I would probably try not to get that all over your watercolor paper other than on the edge of it, so be extra careful. Right? So what we're trying to do is we're trying to allow this to dry flat. And so once you've got all 4 of your sides done, we're gonna let this paper dry. Okay, and this is gonna become the surface in which we can actually do our watercolor. You're gonna see that when you add water and washes to it, it's not gonna buckle. So maybe for this, you know, one that we're gonna actually use in our artwork, what we can do is the artwork is actually going to be 4 by 5 when we're done, but I'm going to go ahead and make it a little bit bigger than that. We can always draw the border in later. So maybe what you want to do is do some tick marks, right? And if I do tick marks, I can line up this paper tape on it so that it's nice and straight. So I should have thought about that ahead of time, but we all learn from our mistakes, right? So you could either draw in those borders, right? And then when it's soaked, you put it in here, you line up this paper to that, right? And that will be nice and straight. You wouldn't want to just tape down dry paper though, because then you're still going to get buckling. Okay, well, let it dry. Don't draw on it if it's still damp. Let it go, okay? Just make sure your paper is nice and flat so it adheres to the board, okay? And then we'll be able to work on it tomorrow.